Okay, so I want to add some of the remaining elements to this detail. I might just do some of the simple things first that relate to scale. So the big one is text, and then another one that you might realise is related to scale is the size of the dashed lines. So in other words, your line types, and then the other one is hatching. So I'll do the hatching first because that is probably the easiest in terms of setting the scale. So I've got here a concrete hatch set as my current layer, and I'm going to click on the hatch button in the draw panel, and it should then take you to the new hatch ribbon, which if you haven't used AutoCAD for a little while is a fairly new feature. It came in 2014. And so with this new ribbon, you set all the options there. It doesn't come up in a dialog box anymore unless you make it. And so the first thing is to make sure it's on a pattern, if you want a pattern, that is. And I do, so I'll choose pattern there. It was on that, but you just should check that. And then your hatch patterns will be next to that. You can just click on the hatch pattern button, and you'll see then a list of all these standard preloaded AutoCAD hatches. Okay, so the one I want is actually called concrete, or is it AR concrete? So I'm just going to have a look through here. Should always be loaded, but here we are, AR conc. And then I'm not going to place it, I'm just going to hover over this so you can see the size. And you should always look at that. With this new preview mode, it's a really useful option. And that's actually turned out pretty well. But that's a bit of a fluke. So it's really because we're doing a detail and we can get away with a scale of 1. But in most cases that's not going to work. So I just want to show you the basic method with any drawing that you can use to set the scale for your hatches. And so as a general rule of thumb, you should try the scale you're planning on printing your drawing there. So in other words, if you're planning on using this for a 1 to 50 drawing, make the scale there 50. If you're planning, in this case, the detail might be 1 to 5 or even 1 to 2, so try that scale. So I'll try 5, and then hovering there, you can see with this particular hatch pattern that's a bit large. So I can use a bit of judgment and say, well, that's too big, so I'll try 2. And it is graphical, so it doesn't need to be precise. In this case, maybe even 1 makes sense, but you'll see later with some of the other patterns that 1 definitely isn't going to work. So you need to be able to adjust the scale there, and a little bit hit and miss. The AR patterns as well tend to have different sizes to the ANSI patterns. So ANSI is American National Standards Institute, and they have a different way of working out sizes essentially to the AR, which is, I think, architectural is what that stands for. And then you've got the ones that don't have anything before them and they work differently again. So the main thing is that you can set the scale, and you've got some way of starting to do that. So I'll just, oops, didn't mean to hatch that. So I'll just do that again. I clicked into the main drawing. So always remember, with the basic option, which is essentially pick points, you still need to click in the area that you want hatched and then press enter. So now I want to hatch the wall. So same tool obviously, but I'm going to go to my wall hatch layer, wall exterior hatch layer, and then again using the hatch tool. This time it's an ANSI pattern. ANSI 32 is a good one for brick hatches. So hovering inside here, you can see again it's still got a scale of 1, which is no good here. It's far too dense. So here you can follow that, again, general rule of thumb that I was saying. I'm going to say this is probably for a 1 to 5 detail, so I'll try 5 there for my scale, and hovering inside those bricks, that's pretty good. So luckily, with the sorts of hatches we're doing here, I'm going to click on each brick. With these sorts of hatches, they're essentially symbols. So it's trying to hatch the rest, but I'm not going to click there. I'm going to press enter to finish it. And so because they're symbolic, we don't really need to be too particular about the size. If you're using another kind of hatch, if you're using one of the patterns that is a representation, so in other words like the blocks here where you're seeing an elevation of the bricks, then you do need to try and get the size to be the real size of the objects. But where it's a symbol for the material, like the brick hatch or the concrete hatch, the size really is up to you, but you still just want a baseline to work with. And so again here the sand and the fill can use the same approach. So I've got a sand and a fill layer, and I might just do the hatches on those layers for now. So again here in your hatch patterns you do have a sand hatch. Sand is a bit of a funny one because if you do it too small it's just far too dense. So I'm going to change that to say 25, and you can see that's a bit too big actually, so let's try something in between 10 and now it doesn't even want to show it to me. I think it's just going to wake up. No, cancel. So it did actually put something in there, it was just too far to see. It's a really funny one because when it's too dense it just shows as solid, but when it's not dense enough it you can barely see it. So there, that's actually showing me the pattern, but it's so spaced out that you can barely see it on the projector there. So again with 1, it's also annoying with the preview. Sometimes you've got to jiggle it a bit to get to show you the preview again. So again, it's got the hatch showing there, but that's just not dense enough. So I'm going to try going to less than 1. So I'll try say 0.3, and that's not too bad. So again, just a symbol, and you can play around with the scale. So then the final one on the fill layer, and again you do have a pattern. So you can either use so earth should be for what's below. Now sorry, have they got it? Sorry, gravel is fine. So here gravel, notice it's just gravel by itself, so there's no AR or anything else. And so again the way it does its scale is different to the sand or the concrete. So we're going to try a different scale factor, and again I'll start off with say about 5 and see how that looks. That's not too bad actually, but maybe go a bit smaller and make it 3, and then again that's pretty good. So again with hatches just try to use your judgment for the size, but there is a logic to it. It's just not worth going too far into that. Yeah, it's I mean when you get stuff from America it's always interesting, but well, I'll just point out the scale factor. 25.4 is the number to remember when you try and change things from America, because that's the number of millimetres in an inch. And so then, so the line types, you can see here we've got the membrane layer, which should be dashed. So I'll go into layer properties, and there's my membrane layer, which you can see there has the line type set to continuous. So I then click on that continuous, and it'll show me then in my loaded line types that I only have that line type available. So to get more, click load, and that'll give you the list of line types. And it's the same basic issue with as you have with hatches. Notice how some of these are ISO, AutoCAD ISO, and some just have the name of the line type. So you just need to decide which ones you're going to work with, because they size or they scale themselves very differently. So either use all ISO line types or don't use them at all and just use the others. So I'm going to use the others because I know how they scale. And so here either dashed or hidden. Hidden is basically just smaller dashes. I think in this case dashed is fine. Notice you've got dashed and then dashed times 2 and dash 2, which are different. Dash times 2 is twice the size, dash 2 is half the size. but I'll just go for dashed. And then just remember, when you're in this dialog box, it'll leave it on the one that you've had previously, so you still need, even if after you've loaded it, you still need to choose the new one that you've loaded to actually assign it to the layer. So now I can see it's changed, and so back in my drawing I should see a change. Luckily I can. You won't always see this, but I'm just going to zoom in so that you can see it's changed. But notice that they're really close together, those dashes. They're really small. So, do any of you know the way you change the scale in model, which is where we are at the moment? You can use all those options. So LT scale's one, and then there's another option you have in your layer panel, in your properties panel, to change it there. But I'm going to show you a better way using annotative scale. Alright, so down here on your status bar, you've got the little scale selector. Okay, it's important to realise that is annotative, so it's setting scale for lots of different things. Right, but notice it's on 1 to 1. I'm going to change that to 1 to 5. Right, now there's no change in my line type, but I'm going to type RE, enter, and then I'll see the change. So that's the best way, because not only is it setting the scale for your line type, but also text and dimensions. So remember that one, annotative scale. Okay, so now I'm not going to worry too much about dimensions tonight, because that's a big thing and we can spend more time on that later. So I'm just going to set a text style up that'll work for the size that I've been drawing, for the scale, in other words. Right, so to get your text styles, again, this is a feature that might be new to you if you haven't used the new versions of AutoCAD. On the Home tab, you've got the annotation panel. You don't need to go to Annotate up the top. Just stay on Home and then click on the Annotation drop down, and you'll see the Text Style button. Click on that, and then you can click New to make a new text style. Not text style, but new text style. So once you click New, and you can just call this what it's going to be used for. I'll say Notes. And then the font's up to you. I might even just leave it on Arial. And then the height, using this method, you don't need to factor in all those complex things like you used to in the past, your scale and all those other things. Just make it the size you want it to print. So do you know the size of a standard note? The height?
9 or 12.
That's for a big one. But what about when you're doing just your own lettering? Yeah, 2's the minimum, and 2.5 is good if you can. It's a bit more legible, but 2's about the minimum for readable text. 1.8 if you really have to, you can go to, but 2's good, 2.5's even better. And then the main option, annotative. Okay, if you don't tick annotative, then you can't work with the height like this. So that's it. Set current to make it the current style, and then close. You can see there, notes up here is the current style, so I can close this. And then I'm going to draw some text. Next week we'll look at doing leaders as well, so you can do your own arrows built in with the text. But just to do some text by itself, you can always draw in your own arrows anyway. I'll just do some of this text. So, clicking on the little drop down there next to text, or under text, I'll do multi-line text because that's probably easier at first. And I'm just going to click 2 points to make a rectangle. So that's basically the area of my paragraph. And then type in that note that's there. So note for class A and S soils. Whatever it says, soil classes in HE and P require engineers specification, or something like that. Okay, so notice automatically the text is the right size. If I was to print this out at 1 to 5, which is the scale I've got set down here, then the text is going to be exactly 2.5 mil high. Right, so if the text looks smaller than it is here, it's because that detail is probably set to print at a different scale. Oh, just down here.
Okay.
So if I change it to 1 to 2, and then I'll draw some more text, just with multi-line again, and I'll put new note. So notice the text there is much smaller, because that's set up for 1 to 2. If I change it to 1 to 10, going the other way, and then I'll just do some new text. That'll do. Okay, so notice that text is much bigger, because again it's set for a different scale. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I will. So that's actually all I'm going to do. Have a go at doing some of the notes, but remember we're going to look at doing leaders, which will incorporate the things we've done with text, with also setting up an automatic arrowhead when I do dimensions. So I'll do that next week. But if you can get all of that done during the week, that'd be great. And like I said, have a go at the conference room. You don't need to take it that far, just a simplified version like that would be plenty. If you can get that done, that'd be great. It's a really easy thing to draw, but the main thing's the detail. And of course I haven't saved it yet, so that's really important. Save as, and always save your stuff. And remember, AutoCAD gives you an autosave, but it's not good to rely on that. And so let's just call this slab detail. And that's plenty for tonight, so I'll just finish the video there.